Hello, I'm Michel Gagné, and you are listening to the Real-Time Visual Effects Podcast, where wizards reside.
You have a gift. You have a passion for creation. There's something inside you that wants to express itself, and that something has led you to explore the world of visual effects, a place where magic happens, and the only limitation is your imagination. All the greatest artists in the world started somewhere, learning and growing into the people they are today. You being here is the first step to building your legacy as an artist. Learn from the best and brightest in the real-time visual effects community. Sharpen your skills and be your best self. Welcome to episode 15, an interview with Mr. Andreas Glad. He is a visual effects artist at Goodbye Kansas, working on previous titles like the Battlefield franchise with Ubisoft, and has even have his own company known as Partikel. Before we jump in this interview, I want to share a quick story when I first met Andreas 3 years ago. When I jumped into visual effects for the first time, I scavenged the forums and found some Discord channels starting with Unreal Slacker. And I think it was really simple, like how to create a material or how to spawn a single sprite emitter. And I remember his words so clearly in my mind. Go Google it. That was his advice. And thinking back on it, that was probably one of the best pieces of advice somebody could give a new artist. It's to help them learn to be a problem solver and find the answers themselves. Because we want so many hand-me-outs. And, at the time, I was really mad. And I'm like, this guy's a dick. But as you get to know a person, and as I got to know Andreas, I realized that really what Andreas is he's the mother hen of VFX artists. He's the one who's watching their backs and weeding out, those mean people or the people that don't belong or fit into the industry because their interests lie elsewhere and all they want to do is cause mayhem and trouble. Andreas is an awesome guy. So let's dive into this interview and hear all about his crazy VFX journey.
Here is your host, Travis McCallum.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 15. I have Andreas Glad here. He's a visual effects artist at Goodbye Kansas and has worked on amazing titles like the Battlefield franchise and has even started his own production company called Partikel. Andreas, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing fantastic. It's the first day of vacation. You couldn't have called me at a better time.
Vacation? Where are you located at?
I'm in Stockholm at the moment. I'm planning on staying here for a while.
Is it pretty cool or pretty warm out there during the summer?
It depends on who you ask. If you ask a Swede, it's pretty damn warm. If you ask people from other places, it's probably not that warm.
Okay. Hey, man, I want to jump into all these awesome projects that you've worked on in the past, along with this really revolutionary part of being involved in the visual effects community for running our Discord and being on the website. Let's jump back for a second and start with, how did you get into visual effects?
Right. So on Monday, the wheel was invented, and then I started doing effects. This was a while ago. No, I actually went to a vocational school for digital graphics. So it was a bit of 3D, a bit of film, a bit of games. So not dedicated to effects at all. But I realized quite early on that I liked the technical part of the art stuff. We had one lecture, I think, like a 2 hour lecture that covered particle effects in, I think it was Unreal Engine 2? Something like that. It was a while ago. So we had a look at that. And shortly after that, Unreal Tournament 3 came out. And if you bought the collector's edition, you got access to the engine and a bunch of tutorials. In there was a couple of tutorials for Cascade. And that's pretty much where it started. Is it too soon to jump to the rest is history or nah?
No, feel free to walk us through that journey, kind of where you're at if you want. I'll leave it up to you.
Yeah. So I started doing a bit of that. I mean, there was no information out there at all, so I was absolutely horrible. But I cobbled together some sort of reel, and I put it on YouTube because at the end of the vocational school, the last year, you have to do an internship. So I put that up and started sending out some applications to various companies in Sweden. But like a few days, a week, something like that, after I sent out my first applications, I got a mail, and I still have it in my inbox, with the subject line, hello, ... from someone called Matt Sneap. Never heard of him. So I figured, okay, this might be spam, but I'll check it out. And this guy was saying, hey, I saw your showreel on YouTube and I have a game company. Would you like to come for an interview? I'm like, okay. Looking around the classroom, I'm thinking, yeah, this is one of my classmates just messing with me because this doesn't happen. But just for kicks, I said, yeah, I mean, I'm searching. I'm open for anything. So where are you located? And he answered, yeah, we're in Derby in the UK. When can you come over? And then they flew me over for an interview the next week.
Wow.
So I met Tim, the director of the company, and we went for a dinner, and I met the VFX team as well. Had a great interview, and I was offered the job in the hotel lobby at the evening that day before I flew back home the day after.
And when was this?
2008, I think.
Okay.
It must, maybe September, October 2008 sometime. It's a while ago now. It doesn't quite happen like that for juniors these days, but I mean, there were very few VFX people back then. No, so that company was Eurocom, which did mostly like movie tie-ins and stuff like that. So the first game I ever worked on was Ice Age 3, The Dawn of the Dinosaurs. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, what's the name of is it a sloth or something? I'm trying, Ned, Zed?
Sid.
Yeah.
Sid, the Master of Fire. Yeah, that was good stuff. I mean, I enjoyed that. That was a fun project. I started out doing that like super stylized, cartoony sort of things. And we had to cater our things to the lowest common denominator, which was the PS2. So we had quite restricted tools. And then when that project finished, since we were a centralized team and we had many projects in the company at all times, I moved straight onto Dead Space extraction. So I went from doing these super puffy clouds where we had to remove the dinosaur bones because that looked too graphic, to doing a decapitation effect. So that was a bit of a switch.
So you kind of just shuffled around with whatever project was available at the time while you were at Eurocom?
Yeah, it's not a telecom company, even though it sounds that way. Yeah, no, there was always a bunch of projects going on there. So we circled around, did a lot of work on a lot of products. So that was fun. I got a lot of games on my CV very fast.
That's awesome, man. So let me kind of ask for your expert opinion on this question. The definition for real-time visual effects is kind of ambiguous across the community. How would you define real-time visual effects right now?
Problem solving, because we do so many different things in so many different ways to just usually tell a story of some kind. Like we do a lot of things similar to tech art because they are also just pure problem solvers. But we are also trying to tell a story with the end result, with the visuals of it, instead of just providing a tool or that sort of thing. We have to provide the end result for that. Some old forums, I used to have Sprite Monkey as my signature, but that's not really true anymore because there's so much more than just particles and sprites now. So it's evolving really fast, I think.
I know a lot of times when new artists are coming out, they tend to ask a lot of questions because they can't figure it out. And sometimes the more veteran people says, go Google it, or, spend some time to think about what you're trying to figure out. Because if you don't understand what the end result is or exactly what you want to achieve, then you're not problem solving. I feel like is a skill that is in demand, but very few people actually exercise it. So in your own thoughts, like when you say problem solving is super important, like how can you articulate that to somebody who's new to the field and wants to exercise that muscle?
Every project is going to be different. So there will never be a correct way to do things. Everything is a hack, everything's a cheat. So you won't be able to learn formula for making effects. Like if I just do these steps, I will have the correct and good looking effect at the end of the game. That's never going to happen. The different limitations with the game, platform, project, all of that is going to dictate how the effect gets made. So you can make a torch for 10 different games and never use the same technique twice. So realizing that you're just equipping yourself with the skills to solve these problems and come up with these solutions and not learning, I learned ray marching shaders today. Sure, but you also figured out this is how you approach a lighting problem. That's the more valuable skill to learn, I think.
Absolutely. Like Bill Cladis had said in an earlier episode that the learning really never does stop. If you want to be a good problem solver, you need to be constantly learning how to learn. That way you always stay up to date with what's going on. I know you said 2008 is when you started. So it's been at least 10 years. We're going on 12 now that you've been in the industry. Thinking back to like when you first started and what you know now, What are some things that you wish you had known that you could apply today?
That I don't need to know everything by 2009. Chill out. I was extremely stressed for my first few years, and I still get it as sometimes today. Like, oh crap, I need to be really good at simulations. I need to be able to hand draw, and I need to be able to program right now. Otherwise, I will never be able to keep up. And just chill out. Learn one thing at a time when it's interesting and fun to you. Don't force your way into programming if you really just want to draw nice fire sprites. Just follow what's fun and what's interesting to you at the moment.
Yes,
try to stay relaxed.
That. I love that. Interesting and fun. Because what is work if it's not fun, right? Well, I guess.
It's gonna. Well, even if you follow what's fun, it's gonna become work. But then it's, I kind of like this. If you go out and, okay, this is my job now. I don't like doing it, but this is my job now. It's going to go even further down when you get stressed and the workload gets higher. Yeah, you need to start from a level of, this is actually fun. Because it's a hard industry, so you need to be able to enjoy it at some point.
Yeah. I know a lot of times people are posting their work online, and occasionally you comment and provide some feedback or critiques on questions or work that they've created. I was curious if you can maybe share some of your thoughts on things that you're looking at in the work of others, or even your own work when you're iterating on it to make good to great effects.
Timing. You can have the perfect sprites, the perfect textures, and then you can have super cool post-process effects and the best scenario ever. But if the timing's off, the effect is going to look bad. And that's also the biggest hurdle to get into VFX, I think, because timing is really hard to learn. You need to just practice it and develop the eye to see, this looks good because it has anticipation, and then it goes up, and then it has a follow-through. It's really hard to see what makes an effect look off, if you know what I mean, if you don't have that eye, because you can make a super cool like shockwave, and it just doesn't work, and it's usually because of timing. So that's what I look at the most. The rest, I can teach that, but timing takes just a lot of practice.
Awesome. Andreas, I was wondering if you could describe to me what your workflow looks like when you're creating a brand new effect from start to finish.
Well, that depends on... It's a super hard question to answer, and it's the most boring answer. It's just going to be, it depends. Like so many things that come up in Discord. But it very much does depend. It depends on what project it is, and it depends on what stage the project is. And that's probably the biggest thing that students don't know. If I'm in the pre-prod of, let's say we're making a new fictional Battlefield-esque game, and I'm going to set up muzzle flashes and an artillery explosion. It's going to take me weeks to do those effects because I need to set up a sim system so I can make the textures, and I need to iterate on those textures, get them in game, test them in scenario or a play test if possible, and see, it works, doesn't work. It works when it's in this scenario, but not this one. Okay, back to the simulation package and just tweak it and rework it. So it's going to take a long time to do all of those things. But then when you're like mid-project, you have like a core set of explosions, you have your fires, you have smokes, all the stuff that you really use a lot. You can take those and start building a new explosion. It can take a day or a couple of days. So it speeds up. And then at the last month, weeks of a project, you kit bash stuff together like there's no tomorrow. You just grab whatever. Oh yeah, that explosion had some sparks. Shove that in. Yeah, looks good enough. And the next. So the workflow changes a lot through the production. So it's not always going to be, okay, first I'm going to draw my concept, then I'm going to make my texture, then I'm going to gray box my effect. That's never going to happen, but it is a very changing thing. I kit bash a lot more than people think. Reuse as much as possible. That's my advice.
Awesome. And it kind of makes a good point there, at least when you're thinking through these stages of early development to kind of mid-level, and then finally as you're trailing off toward the end, there is a point where you iterate and improve and then experiment as you kind of work your way through the different phases.
And remember that you're going to redo a lot of the things you work on. Let's say you have a 2-year project. The stuff you work on a year before release, don't sweat so much about it. I mean, it has to look good because there's always going to be internal demos, there's going to be playtests, all of that. But I highly doubt anything of that is going to go into the game untouched. You're going to redo pretty much everything the last 6 months. That's at least my experience.
I was wondering if you could describe to me what a day in the life of Andreas looks like from sunset to sunrise, maybe a workday.
Sunset to sunrise, it's going to be mostly sleeping.
Sorry, vice versa. Good catch. Good catch.
But yeah, it depends. If you're during like pandemic corona times, it's going to be very similar because I'm just going to sit in front of my computer and do not a whole lot. And then I'm going to go for a walk in the forest.
So what time do you typically wake up in the morning? Are you an early bird or a late riser? Or?
Way too late. No, I usually wake up around 8, 9-ish. Well, I do that now at least. When I have to commute, I get up a bit earlier at least so I can get to an office. But now I just have to roll out of bed, get my ass in front of the computer and get going. So 8, 9-ish, have a late lunch and then get back to work. And then hopefully, well, right now I'm doing air quotes now, but I'm guessing people won't see that. So I usually try to walk home from work by going for a walk straight after work just to clear my head a bit. Because I don't miss the commute, but I miss the downtime between working and not like having free time.
Yeah, because your home is both your place for work, but it's also your place for play and leisure as well. So how do you kind of like differentiate the two, at least during Corona? So let's say we finish work, like what do you do with your downtime when you have some relaxation? I see somebody in the background, so I guess you don't spend it all alone.
No, I live here with my fiancée and my cat. And well, the last few days at least, we've been having Nerf battles break out quite regularly, chasing each other around. Not the cat, he doesn't partake.
The Nerf guns, is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. No, but I enjoy a lot of games. I usually pop into Discord and play games with a bunch of friends. That's been a lot of what I've been doing lately. Damn, I need to find some new hobbies. All of them just went away when I started working from home.
What time do you end up in bed normally? I guess pretty late as well?
Yeah, I try to aim for midnight. I don't have good aim.
You get sucked into your Sea of Thieves or whatever you're playing at the time.
Yeah, Sea of Thieves, doing shenanigans that probably shouldn't be done in games, and then I end up on like Reddit for a while after. And I spend way too much time on Discord, like stupid amounts.
I want to talk about 2 games that you've created a visual effects for. The Battlefield franchise and also the Disney universe that you had the opportunity to work on. They're both very different types of games. So I was wondering if you could first tell us a little bit about what those games are, maybe the premise, story, or plot. And then tell us about some of the effects that you created that were your favorite and you hope people would have noticed when playing the game.
Sure. So I worked on Disney Universe. That was one of the last games I worked on at Eurocom, so like back in 2011, 12, somewhere around there. And it was a 4-player co-op game where you're in a digital Disney theme park and an evil AI has come in and taken over and sent his little robots in to do all kinds of mischief. And the way you battle these robots is by donning different suits from various movies. So you could go from the Pirates of the Caribbean dressed as Jack Sparrow into the Monsters, Inc. universe and have the Mike Wazowski costume on and just do weird things. And all the weapons are stuff they find like garden flamingos or umbrellas or whatever. So one of the cool things that I worked on there was the combat effects. That was the first time I actually got to do like a big system like that. So we had a combat system where if you upgraded your weapon, it became like a fire weapon and eventually became magic missiles. So every time you did a ground slam, it would send out homing stars with rainbow patterns to attack different enemies. And that stuff was really fun because it was so whimsical, and I got to use like cartoon tropes. Like the way a lot of the enemies spawned was by opening up just a black hole with a rim on the back and then just shoot them up through there like Tom and Jerry style. So all of that was super fun to do. Battlefield is a slightly different kind of game. You mostly shoot people in the face and laugh at them. I mean, there's a story as well, but most people have probably not seen the story, even though I did the effects for Battlefield 1 single-player story. Play it! No, so that's a very realistic, gritty combat simulator. So I did a lot of different, more reference-based things. So I didn't get to use my fantasy and imagination that much. But I think that stuff is really cool. So the first Battlefield I worked on was Battlefield 4, and I did a lot of the stuff for what was called Levolution. And that's a horrible name for a feature, but that's what it was. It was a dynamic changing of maps. So if you saw the Or E3 moment, a skyscraper collapsed and all kinds of stuff happened. So that sort of thing is super fun because you can work on these giant things that are going to affect a lot of people. So a thing like the skyscraper going down or a Zeppelin burning, that's going to happen, and at least 64 people are going to probably look up and check it out at least the first 100 times it happens in the multiplayer maps. But I really enjoy doing the big E3 moments, if you will.
Yeah. A lot of that, would you say it's more like cinematic quality or more like gameplay kind of specific?
We had a really good team at DICE, and I was super lucky that I got to try different things. So like on Battlefield 4, I did mostly multiplayer ambient effects, and then I also took over a lot of those Levolution moments. Mm-hmm. But for Battlefield 1, I got to change over. So in the beginning of the project, I was working on a lot of the core stuff, like how the weapons feel, like how much smoke should there be from muzzle flashes and all of that. But then for most of that project, I was responsible for all the effects in the single-player campaign. And that would be both gameplay and the cinematic stuff. Like I did all of the cinematics that from the levels we handled. But I also did like, this is a custom event. When you go into this area, you get bombarded and all of these tanks explode. And all of that sort of thing.
I know that there were certainly times, maybe during your Battlefield or Disney days, that you ran into challenges learning new software or new techniques. Can you kind of walk me through maybe one that sticks out to you that you were able to overcome?
This is a tricky one because for pretty much all of my jobs so far, I've had to learn new software. So I think I'm on my 12th engine that I'm working in now. So there's always that initial period where you feel like, oh crap, I don't know what I'm doing at all. Like, how am I even going to learn this? Because I can't even do the most simple, basic stuff. And getting past that emotional barrier almost, I've done it so many times, I usually know that I'm going to get past the anti-honeymoon phase, like the really rough period when you're trying to learn everything and you're trying to be productive and it's just a struggle. But when you're in it, it's really hard to not get like blinded by it because it's overwhelming. So I think it's going to have to be whenever I start a new engine from scratch.
Yeah. You've worked in Unreal and Unity and Crytek and Frostbite and I guess like even these proprietary ones at like DICE and Eurocom. So you said you're on your 12th. So man, that's a huge learning curve. But would you say at least across many of these engines, a lot of the techniques that you feel like are the foundations of what makes up visual effects principles still apply?
Yeah, absolutely. Effects are the same in every engine. I mean, you're going to use sprites, you're going to use meshes, you're most likely going to use shaders, and you're going to use timing, you're going to use colors. All of that applies to any engine. So a lot of people seem to get very hung up on, like, should I use Unity or Unreal to learn? It doesn't matter. Learn the principles. You can make cool effects in any engine. You're going to have different limitations in every engine. The whole picking the best engine doesn't exist at all. It's the same in all of them. There's going to be a learning curve for all of them.
At your last company, it was Ubisoft, right?
Yeah.
You had moved into a management role for visual effects outside of just creating effects. So you were working directly with other visual effects artists and kind of more in the people side. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on how the job had changed for you as you became a manager, and any advice that maybe you have to share with people who's kind of on the fence about moving into management.
Yeah, absolutely. The job is different in one way, but it's also very similar. As a VFX artist, your job is to deliver the best effects for the game. As a lead, your job is to deliver the best effects for the game by enabling others to do so. Your job is to make sure that they have all the tools they need, all the obstacles are in the way, gets removed. Sometimes that means that you need to set visual targets so they know, this is what I'm aiming for, or this is the method we want to use, or they have the guidelines they want for performance. Sometimes it means that you need to go like 7 rounds with an art director or the creative director just to make sure that your department doesn't get run over. You might not be the one clicking the buttons to make the effects that make it into the game, but you need to enable the guys that are doing so that they can do the absolute best job possible.
Okay.
You have to make sure that you follow your artists because they are following what's interesting to them. And if sure, there's always going to be grunt work that no one wants to do, and that still needs to get done. But when it comes to like a longer term plan, make sure that you help the artist. They want to go into the tech side. Make sure that he gets to practice that and follow that passion, and set like long term goals of, when you're here in 1 year, this would be a good place to be. And the same for the one who wants to do more artistic stuff or whatever they want to do. Make sure that you enable their progress, because otherwise you're going to stand there without a team eventually.
Have there been times where, as artists grow within the company you're working for and you're managing them, do you find times where you want to groom them to become managers someday? And or like, how do you kind of like reach that point where you notice that either they reach out to you and express interest in moving into supervisor position, or you're thinking about making them a successor to you as you maybe move on to other pastures?
Yeah, other. Yeah, that's the thing. As they grow through like seniority, that's a natural sort of progression, that they start to own bigger parts of the game. In the beginning, it might be, yeah, you're responsible for the effects in this level, but then it might be you're responsible for the multiplayer section or the cinematics or whatever. So that sort of grows naturally. And that's also a good test for them to see if they actually enjoy that thing, because once you start owning parts of a project, you start to have to go to meetings with other stakeholders and all that. So you get to like dip your toes into all of those things. And being a lead is a very different thing a lot of the time. So it's not something that's a guaranteed progression thing. Not everyone wants to do that. Not everyone should do that. I don't see it as the next step after like a senior. I see this as a separate path to the side of it. So you would go a junior, intermediate, senior, and then you could branch off and go to the lead side of things. But if you want to keep going and make really awesome stuff, just go for like principal or expert and just keep doing it, because it is a different job. It's not for everyone.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying that for me. But I think it is important, because in any job that you take, there has to be some growth within your position that you can work in towards too. And like you said, some people just want to create effects. They don't want to move into management. But for those that are looking to branch out into a different area, we're always wondering like how to best set up for success for that. So I think you answered that pretty well. So you create educational videos and tutorials for VFX artists with different courses, especially in the area of Houdini, which is a really powerful software out there that's becoming more and more standard. Can you tell me a little bit more about that experience?
Yeah, sure.
Like what prompted you to get into it and what keeps you going?
What prompted me to get into it was that there was nothing. Like there was no like proper full-on courses back then. There were scattered tutorials here and there, but there was very little like production-oriented information out there. And I really wanted to try to change that and try to get some of the things that I've learned back out there, especially because I think this is an exciting field, and mostly because I'm selfish. And when there's more info out there, more people can become VFX artists, which makes hiring them a lot easier. That's how it started. And then I just kept going because I enjoy it. I enjoy like seeing people grow. Like, we had a growth spurt a while back when I was looking at, again, I'm on Discord way too much. So I was following a bunch of artists. And then within like a few weeks, there was a whole bunch of them just popping up with, I just got my first job. And that's just the best feeling ever. Seeing people that have started from like the absolute minimum, like I've never touched an engine before, and then start working through following tutorials and even coming in there, asking, interacting with the community and growing. It's just an amazing feeling to see.
Awesome. So I definitely see the appeal for that. I think you decided to sign up with Pluralsight for your tutorials. Why that one over others?
Pluralsight reached out to me early on before I did any proper tutorials outside of like the intranets of the companies I worked at. And they were very patient with me. And I think that's what made a lot of it happen, because a lot of the time when I just speak normally, I stutter a bit and I fumble words, as you've heard in this podcast. But it was way worse a few years ago. But they were very patient with me. I had an editor that would work through and say, yeah, this here, it's a bit unclear. You should probably do that. So they were really good at getting me up to speed with how to actually make course material, because I know the stuff I was talking about, but I didn't know how to teach that. So it was just a really good collaboration there.
Do you have any advice for people who are looking to start their own courses and be teachers? Any thoughts on lessons learned?
Two things, I think. The first would be to find the style of course or tutorial you want to make. Mine are super edited, so I make sure that if I make a mistake, it's one that I've rehearsed 20 times. So I know that this is going to break, but it's because I want to show this certain thing. That's good for some people. Some people find that very unhelpful because it's so clean and straightforward and just shows the correct way of doing it. Some people prefer to see someone organically run into an issue and how they troubleshoot it, how they solve it. You should probably try and find the style that you enjoy watching and style you want to teach in. And the second is to get a good mic so you can get real close up to the mic and a pop filter.
I agree 100%. Audio makes a big difference. And there are so many tutorials out there and so much data to consume. Sometimes it is overwhelming and, you're having a hard time filtering the good from the bad. I know that you started your own company called Partikel. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about it. Like, what made you decide on setting it up and how has it been since?
So the reason I started it was because a few years ago, I decided that I wanted to try something else and get out of games. So I actually signed up for a university course, left DICE to go do it. But I realized that I didn't want to completely leave games behind. So I started up the company just to be able to freelance a bit on the side to get a bit of extra cash while I was studying. And it just kept growing. So it eventually overtook. So I spent more time on the freelance stuff than on my studies, with the results suffering as they should. But that's how it started. And then the nickname just stuck because you might not know this, but particle just means particle in Swedish. Huh?
Very, very cool.
Yeah, that's just how it started. I don't think I'm going to do a whole lot of freelancing going forward because there's so many things that frustrate me with it, like all of the admin stuff, like sorting out contracts, finding clients, doing all the tax stuff. All of that takes a lot more time than I wanted to. I just mostly want to make cool stuff. So right now, working at a studio allows me to make a lot more cool stuff.
Well, you mentioned that you had left DICE to go back to school and further your training. What did you go back to school for? What was it that you were interested in pursuing?
Well, I went back for the obvious choice of mechanical engineering. No, I wanted to start making things that I could touch, turn, and like hold in my hands because I've been making digital things for so long.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do that. I went to a specific course that was like product design with additive manufacturing. So a lot of 3D printing of different types, because that sort of thing still is really interesting to me. Unfortunately, the university I went to was not great. So there were times when I had to help the teacher with some of the lectures and so on. But I got through a lot of good courses, like all of the math stuff has helped me a lot since then.
So thinking about like what's got your interest right now and where you're curious about and what you're wanting to spend your time, pursuing as far as like goals are concerned, where's your mind at?
Right now, I want to bridge the gap between games and film. Since I work at Goodbye Kansas now, it's a film VFX house with a real-time department that I reside in. So I want to make sure that we can take like all of the super cinematic qualities of pre-rendered stuff and get that into real-time projects. And I want to see how close we can get to that. There was a good presentation by Naughty Dog a few years ago called Chasing Film in 5 milliseconds. And I think that's a good summary for what I'm trying to do right now as well.
Awesome. Andreas, are you ready to move into the lightning round? Quick and easy, just like visual effects?
Absolutely not. So let's do it. Just like in VFX.
If only it were that easy. If it were that easy, none of us would have jobs.
Yeah, that's true.
The robots would be taking over. Okay. What is a perfect one-day getaway in Sweden and the surrounding area?
I'm going to modify it If it's in Sweden, I'd say go for a long hike in the north among the mountains. But if you're in Stockholm, I would say go out into the archipelago. There are islands outside of Stockholm. Go out there and try swim run. It's a sport where you strap on a wetsuit, running shoes, you start on one island, you set a goal on another island a long way away, and then you get there. If there's water, you swim. If there's land, you run, and just do that. It's the best way to experience that nature.
I'm wondering how much distance is between each island now. Is it like a mile swim in each one? That'd be a workout.
It varies. It varies a lot. They do the World Series out there, and there's a time cutoff because the giant ferries need to pass at one point in the day. So some of the swims can be long, but you can do a lot shorter as well.
That's awesome. What video game or app are you using on your phone that is the most fun?
Most fun? That's a hard one. The one I use the most is probably Reddit, but I wouldn't consider that fun. Probably Audible, because that brings me a lot of joy.
All right. Is there any soundtracks or music playlists that you enjoy listening to?
A lot of cinematic, like epic music, like Two Steps from Hell, Audio Machine. That's the good stuff. You can listen to that and work for days.
I'll have to look that up. Two Steps from Hell.
Think of any game trailer or movie trailer you've ever seen. It's probably one of those two bands.
What is your favorite thing to cook or eat?
My favorite thing to cook is nothing. I really dislike cooking. So as simple as possible, I would say. But if I could pick anything to eat right now, I could really go for a tonkatsu ramen, because the place that sells it is too far away, so I can't get there without public transport. And I really miss that ramen.
Yeah, I love ramen. It's good. I lived in Japan for 2 years, so I got to.
I'm jealous. I went there for a lecture tour and visited a bunch of game companies and did presentations and talks and ate all the things.
What is your favorite book or podcast you've listened to recently?
Book would probably have to be The Martian. I really listened to The Martian lately because it's just an awesome book about a problem solver, and named our cat after the main character, Mark Watney.
They made a movie off of that, right?
Yeah, with Matt Damon. It's pretty good. I like it. But the book is so much better because they go into so much more nerdy detail about everything. It's just wonderful. Podcasts would be Hardcore History with Dan Carlin. He's the history teacher I never had. If he was my history teacher growing up, I would probably be a historian now, because he can make absolutely anything sound super interesting.
What is your favorite video game visual effect you're jealous of that isn't your own?
I've thought about this, but I don't have a single effect that I can pick, but I have a single game, and that's Uncharted 4. The whole world they built with the effects in that is absolutely stunning, and I'd say that's still the high watermark for game effects, and it's getting old now.
That's with Nathan Drake over at Naughty Dog, right?
Yeah.
And they also made the Last of Us series, right?
Yeah, I'm playing through Last of Us 2 now, so no spoilers.
I heard you've been struggling to make it through that game.
It's a dark game, man.
Best advice for a first-time visual effects artist or people looking to get into the industry?
Don't worry about what the correct way to learn is. Pick a project that you want to do, and don't care so much about what you should be learning. Like, figure out, I want to be a spell master, or I want to do the best waterfalls in the world, and start making a waterfall and get stuck. Because when you're stuck, you know what it is that you're struggling with, and you can ask people good questions and get productive answers. And you also know what information to seek out.
What are you most excited about for the future of visual effects?
I would say how close we are to catching up to film. All of our hacks are still there, but we're starting to glimpse slightly more of the film production style tools, like fluids and stuff, all happening in real time now. So it's really starting to catch up to what can be done while you have all the time in the world. And that's super exciting.
Would you consider Houdini real time or getting close to it, or is it still pre-rendered?
No, Houdini is still pre-rendered, but you can use Houdini for the real-time stuff. Like before, you could use Houdini to make flipbooks, and that's really cool. But now you can take those same simulations and bring the volumetric data into an engine, and that's where I think the interesting part happens. Where that data gets created, it doesn't matter so much, I think. But the fact that we can start seeing actual volumetrics happening and having it lit and shaded in a way that's convincing, that sort of stuff is cool.
What question do you never get asked that you wish you were asked more often?
It's probably going to be something like, have you played Portal 2?
Yeah.
Because at one point, things go a bit sideways, and GLaDOS asks you, how are you doing? Because I'm a potato. And I think that's a good thing to ask, not just for like your near and dear ones, like asking people, how are you doing? How are you holding up? Do you need anything? That sort of thing is really nice.
So how are you doing, man? How are you holding up?
I'm struggling, man. How long have you got? It's been a rough time, but I'm holding on.
I mean, you've got your health and you've got a roof over your head.
Yeah, that is true.
Maybe get some ramen, eventually.
Yeah, some ramen would get me a lot closer to being well off, I think.
I do agree. And to all our listeners, make sure that you check in with others and just ask how they're doing. Just watch out for each other's mental health. And I know there's a lot of people in even Discord communities I'm a part of where, suicide rates are going up and people are just kind of giving into despair. And it's important to support each other and hold each other up during these difficult times.
Yeah, take care of each other. Even if it's not a difficult time, take care of each other. We only get one shot at this.
Andreas, do you have any final thoughts to plug? Anything you want to promote? Any ways for people to get in touch with you if they wanted to ask more questions and follow up to this interview?
Make cool shit. That's my message to people. That's what I enjoy doing. That's what I enjoy seeing. Like I've said, I'm always on the Discord server, and there's a ton of people there now. It's growing every day, like the real-time FX server. I think that's the place to be if you want to start getting real-time feedback on what you're doing. And the forum is great, but then you have to wait for someone to see your posts and stuff. So get on the Discord and make cool shit.
One way I like to think of it is how we treat live streaming like YouTube as kind of this archival footage where use it as reference materials. And then we have, twitch.tv where you can get instant feedback. And that's kind of how the Discord server responds, because typically if you just have a quick question for something you just want to get an answer to, post it on Discord. If you want to share, some kind of like huge discussion that you want to capture and reference, for years to come, put it on the forums.
Yep.
Thank you so much for taking the time to interview with me. I know everybody across the community really appreciates the time that you put into this. And for those that don't know you, touch base with him. He goes by Partikel on the Discord channel and the forums as well, or?
Yeah, I think so. I never look at my own name. I think so, yeah.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Thank you so much today for listening to episode 15 with Andreas. It was a real pleasure to talk with him. And as Andreas said, he's on Discord way too much. So definitely pick his brain and ask questions and find him under his alias Partikel for more information. I want to make a quick announcement. There is a competition going on the Real-Time Visual Effects forums. Jenga FX and Real-Time VFX are collaborating on this awesome challenge going on where you get to use the Embergen software. They're giving, I believe, everybody free 2 months just to be able to enter this competition and use this liquid fluid simulation. And if you haven't heard it already, back in an earlier episode, we had Nicholas Severt, the CEO of Embergen, come on and kind of talk this through. So listen to that. The grand prize is supposedly going to be big, involving NVIDIA Studio, and they'll kind of share those details, I believe, July 31st. So definitely check in on that and get involved. It's great practice, and I'm pretty sure that Embergen is going to become a industry standard tool for real-time visual effects artists at some point. All right, guys, our next interview is highly requested, so stay tuned for the next one with Miss Shannon McSheehan Burke. Rock on.